Hey everyone, and welcome to my video where I'm going to be redrawing the first digital art piece I ever made, which was back in October of 2015, so about 5 years ago. Now I was going to make this video and post this video on in October of 2020 so that it would be, closer to 5 years ago, but I didn't finish the video in time. I did finish the drawing in time, and I was really proud of myself for not procrastinating and forgetting about it, but then I just didn't do the voiceover for the video for the next few months, so now here we are, and I'm doing it now. So the original drawing was sort of a bird person. You can see it a bit in moments of the video. It'll be, I'll put it up on screen at the end to compare, but it was, I can't fully remember why I decided that I would start by making what is technically a harpy, though I couldn't remember the word at the time. I do remember that I had based her visually, at least somewhat, off of the Tooth Fairy from Rise of the Guardians. So she has that like feather thing going down her nose, although the Tooth Fairy in Rise of the Guardians does actually have a nose under that. I didn't draw her with a nose either of these times, but it's close enough, that's what I was going for. And in the original, it did kind of look like her. I do know, so when I redid it now, I tried to sort of remember what it was I was going for with what I did in the original, because a lot of the time it didn't come across the way I wanted, and tried to redo that more closely, more accurately to what I had envisioned at the time, because that's always the fun part of redrawing old art, is when you can sort of remake it the way you would have wanted it to be. And here it is. Here's the old version. So I've definitely gotten better at drawing faces. A big problem with the one I had made first, and the way I used to draw, is things didn't really have a shape. And a lot of people talk about this with art, is when you get better at it, you get better at sort of imagining how things work in a 3D space, which, some people, of course, stylistically choose to not lean into that as much. I definitely like going closer to realism in that aspect, at least. And in the original drawing, something especially with the way I did the shading, it made everything look very flat. Like I had sheets of paper lined, like kind of folded over each other. Especially there's this shadow under the edge of her hairline, which makes it look like her hairline is floating above her. And there's a shadow on her neck, I think. Yeah, here it is. There's a shadow on her neck. Her entire neck is in shadow to the point where it looks like it's much further back than the rest of her body, and it doesn't look the way I wanted it to, of course. The original wings, I'm redrawing wings now, which I actually drew from reference this time. I had looked up a picture of, I think it was an owl taking off, and I repeat some of the wing patterns later when I'm coloring it too. The originals, I just kind of did swoops to sort of give the illusion of feathers. And, it looks like something. I'm not going to be mean to my childhood self. It was my first ever digital drawing. I get it. But it definitely does help, and has helped me since then to look up references for things, because you don't always know what things look like, and you can't assume that you do. And I remember even those, like, I've been drawing a lot more wings, as can probably be evident by how much more practiced these look than the original wings, if you can call them that. But I know that it's still hard for me even now to get these long, straight, or at least slightly curved lines when doing line art. I remember that being a problem even back then. That was the hardest part of that entire drawing when I did it the first time, was those wings, because they were so big. Especially they were big because the original drawing, dimension-wise, was 10,000 by 7,000 pixels big, which is very big. I'm sure some people use that scope of dimensions, especially if they're working towards printing things, because it needs to be really high quality. I definitely don't do that. I definitely have much smaller canvases now. But it also didn't help that my computer was not very good, which meant that loading all those lines in Photoshop was just it did not go the way I wanted it to. It was very laggy. Okay, so this is fun because this is something that in the original drawing I didn't do this, but I did use a reference image for the background. If you can believe it, it definitely doesn't look like I did. But the way that I'd used it in the original is I'd taken a reference image of a background and I'd put it behind the drawing that I'd made, and then I color picked some sections of the mountains and kind of filled in the shapes very loosely, which I guess kind of worked. Until I got to the trees, where I just kind of filled in the shape and then drew the trees much bigger than they were in the original reference. But in this one, I drew a background based on a couple photos that I'd seen, specifically to one photo to see how the mountains looked, one photo to see how the trees sort of grouped together, and the photo with the trees is the one I ended up using for colors as well. Now, I'd contemplated between using two different color palettes. The first one I'd made myself. I like zoomed out really far so I didn't have to focus on the lines and I could just think about colors. And I'd like what I was going for, but it never really turned out the way I wanted it to. So I ended up going for the sort of bright oranges in the autumn theme that was in the photo I'd used for the trees. I'd gotten really attached to it. So I picked out some colors that I liked from that, and then I grouped them together. And this was also referencing a couple photos off screen to see how the trees would fit together. And it's a lot more detail. Again, I remember in the original, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great life hack to how to make this background work, is I'm just going to put it behind, I'm going to group in these colors for these big sections, and then that's it, and then that's going to be it, and then I'll use some other colors to sort of add details where I feel like there should be details, but it never really worked out the way I wanted it to. Oh, so here again, I'm putting the pattern on the wings based on the photo I'd used for them, because I thought it looked neat. I don't really know what sort of bird she's supposed to represent. I guess based on the fact that I used an owl for the photo, it would be an owl, but I don't know. I don't know. She's just a bird lady. But yeah, in the original, I guess I wasn't really putting as much effort in. That was really a big part of, even until recently, a lot of the time I can look back at old art that I wasn't quite as happy with, even after I made it, because I remember this was my first ever drawing, and I definitely wasn't super proud of it when I'd made it. I have a few drawings where I was, really happy with them, and now I look back and go, well, this isn't quite what I wanted it to be. This doesn't look quite the way I intended it to. But this one was not really one of those. I was happy that I had finished it. I was happy that I'd made it all the way to, completing a drawing for the first time digitally. But I wasn't super proud of it. I could see where the mistakes were. I didn't like the background. I didn't like how it turned out. But I didn't put a lot of effort into the background. Here I am. I'm going back for a third time to make it even more precisely what I want it to be, because it looked a little messy when I looked at it close, and I was like, no, I don't want that. I want it to look nicer. But in the original, because I remember after looking at that drawing back in grade 9 or whatever, 2015, whatever grade I was in back in 2015, early high school, and I was definitely not happy with the background, and it really kind of made me not want to do backgrounds as much anymore. And I know that after that drawing, I can look in my folder from that year, and there's 5 completed illustrations total. And I know I wasn't drawing quite as often then as I do now, but it was still just the fact that I have a lot of unfinished things, a lot of sketches, but nothing that I really, saw all the way through to the end, except a few. And it definitely helps to do that more often. I don't know if anyone's watching this who's starting out at art and wants to improve, I mean, everyone wants to improve, but who's just starting out and wants to know how to get better faster. One of the big things is just doing all parts of art, not just the ones that you like and that you're comfortable with and that you're used to, which is something I still have a problem with. I don't draw backgrounds nearly as often as I should, and I avoid drawing things that I'm not good at, because I'm not good at drawing those, and it's much more fun to stay comfortable and just draw the same headshots over and over again. But it's, you get a lot better at it, and it feels really good to get better at things. It feels good to look back and to be able to redo what your younger self wanted to do in the first place. And I'm really glad I got to do that here. And I know I redraw things all the time, but this is probably the biggest jump that I ever made, and it feels good to look at it again and to see that I did those sunset clouds the way that I had initially envisioned them, and not in that way where they turned out muddy and gray, because I know how to do it now, because I have that practice, and it's, you know, it's great. And like, I'm excited to be able to do this again 5 years from now and to look back at this drawing, which right now I'm really proud of. I'm happy with how it turned out, but I'm excited to be able to look back at it and see all the things that I will be able to do better then. And that's a great feeling. The improvement is a great feeling, and this is definitely an example of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this, and I hope that if there's any aspiring artist out there, they can look at this and see how far they can come in 5 years. And I hope that they learned not to make their canvases overly big if their computers can't take it. So yes, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.